people losing their jobs right and left historically for this, but supposedly there's free speech. There's not free speech, but and they may crack down eventually. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. The more they crack down, the easier it gets. Yes, that's how it works. The more they crack down, the easier it gets. The more you radicalize a population. You have a common sense of oppression among non-victims. That's amazing. That's amazing. Now let's go back into Mr. Q for a minute. And I'll go back into the three wise men and some of their arguments, and they're pretty fascinating. You see, Western civilization pulled out, outside of Eastern Bloc and Russia, had pulled out all this women's rights stuff. And most women thought it had something to do with giving them power. Well, they already had more power than anything. But it was basically, they wanted to increase the tax rolls. Yes, if every woman, a third of the women, or all the women get up and have to get jobs, well then you got to pay more taxes. You double the tax rolls. Another thing you do is you have kids at home, which guess who gets to raise the kids? The state, which means you can put in place your social engineering. It's pretty clever. But you see, every time you go problem, reaction, solution, well, somewhat nature is ultimately going to put you in another direction. In other words, you're going to open up a whole new problem for yourself when you start fooling around with natural law. So they put all these women into different corporate entities and agencies and all over the place. Overnight, you've seen it. And they moved them, and they eventually moved up to critical points. What they did was they put a cement floor underneath them as well. Yeah, they put a cement floor. It's almost impossible to fire a woman. It still is in some ways without getting hit with a lawsuit. A lot of fear in that. Another thing you're doing is putting someone in that is, as a white woman, is deceptive, and she can be ruthless, and she can be. Let me put it to you like this: when a woman is looking at a divorce court, they don't look at it like men. Science shows that women do not see things like men. White women look at a divorce court. They don't care about fair or unfair. They just play practical politics. They achieve an objective by any means politically under the law. They don't have to break any rules, especially when they're stacked in their favor. I mean, most men go in the divorce court and say this process is unfair, but the women, this fair word doesn't enter into the discussion. White men, it usually does. White women, it doesn't. They don't see things as fair or unfair necessarily, mentally. Now, I'm not getting all or nothing here. You see, most great analysts are there to see the glass as half empty. Well, I always see the glass as half full. That's just my job. That's the difference of jobs. You can always see the glass half empty. I'm talking about the majority of cases, how women view things. I've seen the studies on it. And there was one of the wise men had made all these points. The more brilliant of the wise men in this case, and they're all brilliant, but one of them in this particular case had brought out book after book on heroic white women historically. I mean, things that you'd never hear of, I guess. Pioneer white women that fought to the death. Joan of Arc's, the Boudikas. We have that. I mean, you don't really read about that among the Asians or whatever because race is real. Race is that real. I mean, they do have heroic women, but not like Boudica. But Boudica was every inch of a mother, too. Sure she was. She was every inch of a woman. And you have this all throughout Western civilization. And so his point was, maybe there's a percentage of that as well. Well, that's probably true. That's just common sense. And then there's the Angelina Jolie factor. You see, you have a bunch of demoralized white males who can't say anything because it's been stigmatized and they're under a constant critique. And then you have a bunch of females, white females, who are under proactive measures. What I call the Tomb Raider. They think they're Angelina Jolie. They think they're Lara Croft, and some of them are. Some of them are Lara Croft. Sure. I mean, you read a history, read about Boudica, read about Joan of Arc or something, and there's all kinds of these, even like American pioneers, or women fighting off Indians and stuff. So you have that going for you, and that was obviously a factor to some extent. You could argue that. And then you also, but you kind of have a deal breaker of latent Russia. Russia had a totally organic situation. They didn't have as much social engineering. And right now what we're seeing in Russia is that young white girls are gravitating toward what they want to do. If they have talent and they want to develop that. Let's say you're 18, you want to be a mother. Be a mother. If you want to go into the military and serve, be a Boudica. If you want to do all the above, do all the above. And in a natural, organic environment, it's going to use them along the path of least resistance to what their best talent is, instead of just saying all have to be June cleavers and stay at home, or just saying you all have to go to work. What we've seen is one extreme or the other in Anglosphere, specifically in Anglosphere. Either they're at home doing nothing, eating bonbons, being June cleaver, or you got to all be at work. It's very weird, but Russia's seeing the best of both worlds. They also have a low tax rate and a low family. It's not perfect there by any means, but it's a very healthy thing. But what we've seen is that white women can be utilized way more than they were in the 50s, and a way better situation is now, because if you have them at critical points running those rabbits, doing that non-vertical power, and you have your white jackrabbits there stomping rabbits, breathing fire on rabbits, and doing what they do best, vertical power, it isn't antagonistic. One goes with the other. Mommy goes with daddy. It's more complementary. And in my opinion, that's organic. If you're an 18-year-old young man and you want to be an auto mechanic, nothing wrong with that. If you want to marry that 18-year-old girl and have a kid, there's nothing wrong with that. On the other hand, if you want to go be a doctor, those are organic societies. We're not in an organic society. There's too many financial engineers, that type of thing. But that's some thinking on the subject, and you can argue this social engineering. But what it did was it placed white women at critical points very quickly and made it impossible to get rid of. And they don't think like men. They don't have a problem with exercising power once they learn how to exercise it. If you don't believe me, go sit in a divorce court. They don't have a problem with that. They don't see that as fair or unfair. They don't have a problem with doing it and not saying it. They do it all the time. They don't have a problem with problem, reaction, solution. Believe it or not, they don't have a problem with repeaters. Most white men would. They're very individualistic, and so they don't network the same way. And that was devastating when they broke down the white male networks, especially among the working class. If you're a fireman, you can't automatically get your son in a fireman. That was a devastating thing. That'll come back because it's based on natural law, but that's all devastating stuff. But and we can go in this in a variety of different ways, and you can see things in a variety of different ways. I'm just telling you how it works. Look around at all the white women at critical positions, listen to what I've said, and listen to how they, use your head on how they really are good at exercising power. It's complementary. It's not antagonistic, unless they're all running around trying to be men and all the men are trying to be women. Everything's upside down. But in Russia, from what I've seen, solves the debate once and for all with women at critical points. Russia's not by any means perfect. He's not happy about it. He's having to play a lot of games. They're having to play a lot of games, but they're not writing all the rules yet. There'll be a day when things change. There'll be a day when, in the blink of an eye, when things change. Believe me, that's how the world works. Change can happen over time, but there'll be a day and a second when the world changes. When that'll be, who knows? But that'll happen. And I'll be back with you in a minute, and we're going to talk a little more about Russia. One thing you will learn by looking at Russia is that they always attempt to control energy flows. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to always be on the offense. One of the things the talking points do that we've given, and that the mantra that Bob has written, one of the things they consistently do is they put you on an offensive footing. Most of the time in this struggle, you've been on the defensive. You're trying to argue, or you're trying to make it a point with the demoralized population. Well, now you have a population coming out of a demoralized state, and the reason these talking points will work is because they are so offensive. Time and time again, when you've heard me use them, and the handful of times I've used them, and the handful of times that you will hear us use them, they are totally offensive. It is a blitzkrieg. There's nothing defensive in it. One thing you will get when studying Russia is how offense works in controlling your opponent's energy. If you look at Russia in international relations, they are constantly moving and making us move. No one can figure out what they're doing other than the fact that they're running Anglosphere ragged. Pooty Poot sits back and says, it's okay, I'm not mad at you, nothing, it's just, you don't have too much to do, and your job is to run the world, and clearly you don't have that much to do because you're over here in Ukraine. It's okay, I'm not mad at you or nothing, but I just sold 300 Sunburn missiles over to Iran. You might have to worry about that. I mean, I'm not mad at you or nothing, but we just did a new deal in Eurasia and cut off your supply route in Afghanistan. I mean, that's okay and everything. We can negotiate that. I'm not mad at you or nothing. And it is comedy. He does this time and time again. And who knows who's beyond that. I mentioned North Korea. Now North Korea's all getting hot and getting hotter. It's going to get red hot there if that doesn't start World War III. Believe it or not, that's where the end game may start, is in North Korea.